I felt like an alien on this planet, and I felt like I was a walking alien on this planet, and that I really couldn't relate to most people's values. A life at night, and I had a life in the day, and my life at night, dreaming, was much more interesting than my life in the day. Went to many different worlds, many different dimensions. I met many different beings. This world really didn't make any sense.
And that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
And it's very difficult to perceive ourselves. Right now, we are having a dream together. People that are watching, we are dreaming this experience together. Then we become aware of our power. We become aware of the energy that we have that influences this dream, and we become aware of the energies of this dream that influence us. This is another level of dreaming. Going through all these different huge dreams that have influenced us, one by one, we take out the dreamers that dream us. Who am I?
Welcome to the Awakening Entrepreneur Podcast. This show is for entrepreneurs that have chosen to define their life beyond the material. They have followed their soul on a hero's journey towards the mystery of the spiritual. I'm your host, Garrett Ng. Each episode will be learning from awakened entrepreneurs and spiritual thought leaders. They have broken through the mold of being ordinary to extraordinary, challenging our paradigm, shining light to the dark, giving hope when there is doubt. The moment of truth is upon us. It is time to transcend our world from fear to love. Are you ready? Let's go! Welcome to this week Awakened Entrepreneur. We have the amazing Daniel Stone on to this week's show. So if you don't know about Daniel is actually a mentor of one of our earlier podcast guests, Thomas Green. And Daniel's life quest has been to understand his dreaming. As a child, he started dreaming, and we all do dreaming as a child, but for him, his dreams is more real than his waking life, waking reality. And so he started living in two worlds, and he started sleeping more and more and trying to understand what is all this dream about. And I'm seriously having the same fascination as well. And I haven't been able to get any answers. You look up Google, you find people interpreting dreams, but nobody really understands what is the purpose of dream and the different dream worlds when you have, whether it's breath work and taking you to a psychedelic realms or the waking dreams. And Daniel has spent years on it, first like studying the psycho-therapeutic theories from Carl Jung and many others, and then exploring the artistic movements of painting, music, theater, literature. I don't know whether he ended up doing ballet or not. That's something we have to find out. And for 10 years, he's basically traveled around the world. In some of the places I'm really wanting to learn more about how does it actually work, because I hear a lot of great stories about it, which he traveled to learn from the indigenous shaman, including the Australian Aboriginals, which some culture says that, like some text says it's been like the oldest tribes out there, like 75,000 years old. The Tibetan Buddhism, and we all know how sacred that is, and the Toltec wisdom, which is in Central America. And together, he found the language that could bring that all together. Life is a dream. And he has received various initiations into those cultures, including the crystalline intelligence, which I've heard of this crystalline intelligence, but I want to learn more from Daniel as well. And he holds dreaming circles in Mexico, North America, Europe, and Australia. He founded the Mexican Desert Center of the Conscious Dream in 2000, where he now lives. And he's also the author of The Dreamers Who Dreams You and Chu-ra, The Change of Time. He is a teacher, mentor to many, and as well as established international exhibiting artist and musician, which his website is thepaintingthefuture.com. So I've got so much I wanted to ask Daniel and so much to learn from him. So welcome, Daniel.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast, and hello to everyone out there. It's lovely to be with you.
So I'm sure all the audience is wanting to know, do you end up doing ballet?
Do you end up doing ballet?
Ballet dancing.
In the desert?
Yes.
In the desert. In the desert, do we end up doing ballet? In the desert, we do a kind of movement which is really set up to connect different worlds. So there's two different types of body, the physical body and there's the dreaming body. And the physical body has certain limitations and is kind of fixed in time and space and in context of time and space, one time and space. But the dreaming body extends from the physical body and can go to any time and space. And so there's this movement that we do in the desert where we open the dreaming body, and as the physical body is moving, the dreaming body moves into different worlds, into different dimensions. And that creates a bridge between times, a bridge between dimensions, because whilst the physical body is moving on this plane, the dreaming body is experiencing other planes or other dimensions, and we create this bridge between times, create this bridge between dimensions. And that's the kind of dancing we do. You could call it dreaming ballet if you want.
Wow. So do you actually get to, when you're in the dreaming body, I assume you're conscious of it, and can you navigate where you want to go, or you just go with the flow?
Well, that's the work, really. The more you do these practices, and the more conscious you become of how your dreaming body is moving and where your dreaming body is moving. And also, you get more control as to the kind of interactions that you have. If you don't have any control, then it's a bit like you're being dreamed, and you are just the focus of someone being dreamed. But once you develop awareness, then you develop more power within a dream, and then you have more control over what happens within a dream. It's not so esoteric. I mean, it might sound esoteric, but it's the same as your life. Once you become more conscious in the dream of your life as you are awake, then you have more power and control as to where the influence that you have on the dream of your life. So that works in any kind of level. That works in the workplace, it works at home, it works in play, it works in your family situation. And the more aware you become in that dream of your life, then the more influence and power you have in that dream of your life. It's the same. It works whether you're consciously dancing with the dreaming body or whether you're being conscious whilst you're on the computer at work. It's the same principle. You wake up in the dream of your life. There's a dream of the night and there's a dream of the day. You wake up in the dream of your life.
So, Daniel, how many types of dreams are there? Because I know from Tom Green, he shared that there's the waking dream, there's sleeping dreams. Is that just two types, or are there many types?
So there's the dream of the night and the dream of the day. And there are three traditions that talk about life as dream. The Australian Aboriginal tradition, the Toltec tradition, and the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. They don't all use the word dream, but the actual, like for example, the Tibetan Buddhist tradition uses the word bardo, but the principle's the same. We move between different dream states, and we are attempting to wake up in our dream. So this now is a dream. I'm dreaming you, you are dreaming me, we are having a dream together, and we're gradually waking up to why we're having this dream together through the conversation. And I am aware of the energies of this room, of the energies of this day, of the energies of the trees coming in and the energies of these colors. I am aware of your office and that you have certificates on your wall and you have books in a bookcase. I'm aware of this connection between Mexico and Australia that's taking place right now. And then I'm also aware that there are other people that are going to be listening to this in different time zones. And so all kinds of bridges are being connected between this physical place, that physical place, between this dream, between that dream, between this time zone and your time zone now, and between this time zone and the time zones of the people that are actually watching this podcast, whenever they are watching this podcast. So we're trying to wake up in the dream of our life, and that means in our daydream, we're trying to become aware of the influences that control our dream. So the influences can be physical influences, like the color yellow is a vibration that I have, light yellow that I have on the walls. The paintings I have on the walls all have color vibrations and form vibrations coming into the space. But I'm also talking about the dreams that are taking place in the head. The dream of your father, the dream of your mother, the dream of your culture, the dream of your education. All these dreams influence our life. And as we deconstruct them, as we wake up to how these dreams dream our life, then we become kind of more aware of who we are. I mean, our soul journey of who we really are, as opposed to who my father says or wants me to be, who my mother says or wants me to be, who my culture says or wants me to be, what my teachers at school said that I was or wanted me to be. All those voices have an influence over who I think I am. And gradually I'm waking up to the false voices and to the true voices. You know, what are the false voices that try and manipulate me into who I think I am? And what are the true voices of who I am? That's kind of like a path of waking up to the dream of your life.
So the modern day, what we classify as the belief system, the ancients, they classified that as a dream. Is that correct? Because it is kind of true that our belief system is still a perception. It's still like a reality. And if you do hypnosis, NLP, or any of those regressions exercise, or even just going back to the past and just put a new meaning to it, and suddenly that whole story is completely different. So I can sense that it can be interpreted as a dream. Is that what happened with the ancient cultures?
Well, the ancient cultures understood that this is one dream within many dreams, or this is one dimension within many dimensions. And so the journey of the soul takes us through different dream times, or through different lifetimes in different spaces, different times. And then we have that context when we come into this body. When we come into this body, we have the experience of the journey of our soul through the universe. And then we have this time and this space and this lifetime. And then when we die, that is when we leave our body, we continue to journey through the universe. How long we continue to journey and what type of journey that is will depend on the context of this life, what actually happens in this lifetime. What happens in this lifetime will affect what happens in later lifetimes or in your continuing journey. So these dreams are a continuum. It's a continuum of the journey of your soul from the beginning in your star through time and space, passing through this time and space, which is also a dream, and then continuing on your journey afterwards. So the ancients understood, with different languages, but pretty much the same principle, the understanding of how the soul moves through time and space, and that this body, this life, is part of that journey of lifetimes.
So I guess that brings me to another question. It's like, why are we dreaming? And I don't know whether the answer is the same or different from a waking dream or a sleeping dream standpoint, because in the waking dream, obviously that's life. Like, almost like the question is, what is the purpose of life? And when I sleep, I'm getting dreams. Like just even this morning, I started to realize, like, I was in a dream and I was moving from like a holiday destination to maybe packing back home. And that's a lot of stuff to pack. Like, I'm practicing minimalism. I have no idea why in the dream I've got so much clothes and so much stuff. And then I'm getting like tired of the packing. I got bags and suitcase of stuff. And then I started to kind of like what they say, lucid dream, become conscious that I am in a dream. Why don't I just get out? Because I don't enjoy the packing. Then I remember some books or somewhere taught about that you should always just be at peace with the dream. So if rather than trying to escape it, why not just get it to a completion? And I can just, this as my magical world, let me just imagine that everything is already packed. And I did that and I felt good. Okay, time to exit the dream now. So I have no idea what is the purpose of that dream and whether it's even important for me to create a happy ending or not, to come to a resolution. And what's the difference with the waking dream? Are they the same purpose or different purpose?
Okay. So in your night dreams, most of the activity you have is trying to work out and work through uncompleted thoughts, uncompleted feelings, uncompleted issues that are not completed in your daytime. And so there's quite a lot of sorting through different neuroses, sorting through different anxieties, sorting through different fears, fantasies in many of the night dreams on a certain level. There are other levels of night dreams where your dreaming body goes way beyond that and actually starts to travel and communicate with other beings in other dimensions, which can be actually on this plane, on this planet, or can be in different dimensions and different worlds. This is a kind of another level of dreaming.
Am I
The dream I'm
initiating
talking
that, or
about,
the outer being is initiating that?
it can be both, actually. As much as we call the spirits also call us. So it's a kind of interchange, it's an interrelation. Sometimes it's because we need help, and sometimes it's because they need help. Depends, or sometimes it's a bit of both, actually. So there's that, and then the dream of the day is the same as the dream of the night in the sense that loads and loads of information is coming to us, and most of the time we're not aware of that information. So if you wake up in a dream at night, what happens is that you feel very alive and you feel like you have a lot of power because you're not now being dreamed in the night dream. You have some kind of influence over what happens in the dream. And so you become a sort of co-creator of the dream that's taking place. You have a lot more power, you have a lot more influence because you've woken up in that dream. And so you can decide, oh, I'm going to fly, or I'm going to move over there. I mean, when I wake up in dreams, I always want to fly. So I just go, well, I'll just go and fly over there, and I start flying around, which is great, and I really enjoy it because I'm aware that I'm awake in the dream, and then I do experiments. I sort of try different things. Let's just go through that wall and see what happens if I go through there, or let's go and check out those people over there. What would happen if I attempt to communicate with them? And I just kind of play. It's like I have choice, whereas before I woke up, I didn't have choice. Well, it's the same in a dream of the day. It's like when I wake up in my dream of my day, I have choice and I can make decisions. Okay, I can decide things. Whereas if we are in a dream that's dreamed, we are dream. That is to say, if we're just kind of like following the patterns of our conditioning of, well, I'm going to work because that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm doing this course because that's, this education because that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm eating this because that's what I'm supposed to do. Like there's a certain sense in which you go through the motions, which many people do. Most people do really go through the motions. You go through the motions, and then that's more a sense in which you are being dreamed, even though you're not aware that you're being dreamed. You're being dreamed. I will tell you this one moment. I was 19 and I was doing that. I'd really done that. I was going through the motions. I was at university going through the motions. I was at university because that's what someone of my education and my background does. If you're born into a middle-class family, then you go to university. And so I was just sort of following along, and then I write about it in The Dreamer Who Dreams You. I was walking to a lecture one morning, and then I just stopped and I looked around and I just felt this incredible sense of nothingness. It's like, this is nothing. What are we doing? I was just looking at everyone like, what are they doing? Everyone's just following some kind of rhythm here, which is they're not aware of. And I'm following this rhythm that I'm not really aligned with. It's like, what is going on here? And that was a moment of awakening. It was a very uncomfortable moment of awakening, but it was a moment of awakening. It was a moment when I started to question everything. I started to question why I was going to university. I started to question what my motive was, what other people's motive was, what the teacher's motive was, what was the motive behind the education. Just started to question. And that was the beginning of my waking up in the dream. It was a long process, but that was definitely the beginning. And so when you wake up in the dream of your life, you have more choice, you have more power, you have more influence because you become a co-creator in the dream of your life. Most people don't have that power. Most people are dreamed because it takes a certain impeccability, it takes a certain strength and a certain courage to wake up in your dream and to realize how much you've been manipulated. That takes a huge amount of courage. It's much easier to just follow the rhythm of the values of your society and follow the rhythm of the values of your religion or your family. That's much easier to do. and there are all kinds of benefits for you to do that. To actually wake up inside of that and choose not to follow it is courageous. And there's this phrase, the spiritual warrior. That's when the spiritual warrior wakes up and starts the journey to truth. Because like I was saying earlier, you become aware, well, I'm not actually the dream of my father who wants me to go to university. I'm not actually the dream of my mother who wants me to succeed, whatever that means. Well, we know what that means, succeed, get a good job, be comfortable, have lots of things, have a family, and so on. How does society judge success? When you wake up, you start to question that, well, I am actually not that dream of my father, I'm not that dream of my mother, I'm not the dream of this university, then who am I then? Because I've been following those dreams. I've been following the dream of my school system. I've been following the dreams of what the television says is I need or want. I've been following what my parents have taught me and so on, which they did in all good faith. I don't criticize them for that. But when you start waking up, you start deconstructing and you start going, well, actually, that's not really me, that's not really me. And then, well, who am I then? And that's when you start the journey of the spiritual warrior, trying to find out who you really are. And so waking up in the dream of your life is really becoming aware of your truth. Now, if you can go much further than this, because I've been talking about really metaphorically, but you can go further than this and you can say, well, if I wake up in my dream of my life, really, really wake up, you can actually go through the illusion of what the Toltecs call the fixed attention. This is a dream of the fixed attention. It's fixed, like, you are in the office, I am in this room, these are fixed attentions. You have this face, you changed your hair from the last time I saw you, and I am here with these headphones, and these are fixed attentions. Okay. Well, there's another level of attention when you change your assemblage point, where you go through the fixed attention, where you go through the wall. I mean, when I wake up in the dream of night, I can go through that wall because I know it's an illusion, as all Zen Buddhists know that this is all illusion. The classic kind of Zen Buddhist meditation, you sit in front of a bamboo rod, a bamboo stalk for hours and hours and hours and hours, and you just look at it. And then after a while, the fixed attention of the bamboo rod dissipates and it becomes vibration. Okay. Now, we all know from science that everything is made of atoms. And if you stand in front of something for long enough, that's what happens. That's what happens. Everything dissipates. And it's not fixed anymore. It's not a fixed attention. It just becomes energy. The wall becomes energy. The stalk of the...
I hear this from multiple people that they told me, or they told stories of just staring into a tree, a plant, a leaf. And there was one story that I forgot who, but it says like the master was like looking into the forest or a tree or something, and they said they better not disturb the master. But then from the morning to night, the sun is about to set, the master is still there. Like, let's go and tell the master it's time to come back in or something. And then the student went to ask the master, why are you staring into just a plant, a leaf or something? He said, well, what you see in just a tree, a plant, a leaf, I see the universe.
Yeah, the universe is in everything. Like in a holographic kind of theory of the universe, every tiny particle contains the whole. So you can look into any object, be it a wall or a tree or a rock, and you can see the atomic particles inside that, and inside every atomic particle is the universe, according to the holographic theory. So that's true. I mean, in terms of the holographic theory, which is a scientific theory, not a shamanic theory. But the shamanic theory is just uses different languages. There's all kinds of links between science and spirituality. The different language would be your assemblage point shifted. I mean, in the Toltec tradition, the assemblage point shifted. When your assemblage point shifts, it means you start to perceive differently. And so what was once the wall now becomes an energetic doorway into many different realms of existence, levels of existence. So waking up in the dream of our life can be on many different levels. It can be the level of what I was talking about when I had that experience at university, where I started to question my conditioning. But it can be an even deeper level where you start to question the nature of reality. And in particular, in the Toltec traditions and the Buddhist traditions, in particular, we go through the fixed attention. We go through the fixed reality and we look at the energy behind, or the energy behind the fixed attention. And that's what we use in healing. In healing, everything is energy. And we are not dealing with the illusion of what's being presented to us. We are opening to the whole energy of what is being presented to us. So if a client comes to me and tells me, I come to you because I feel this, they tell me a story about whatever, they have a problem with jealousy, or they had this issue with their wife or their husband, or whatever it is, it's a story, okay? It's a story. I'm not really listening to the story. I am on a certain level, but on another level, whilst they're talking, I'm going behind the story to look at them and look at their energy body, because behind that story, there's all these other stories that are much, much, much more important. Like the journey of your soul through the universe brings you into this lifetime, and you have this huge history. And so when I'm looking at someone, I'm looking at the huge history, which is trying to be brought to the attention of this client. And it might be that this client wants an answer to why do I feel jealous, and can you help me with my jealousy, for example. But I can see that there's a much bigger question behind, that there is a certain lifetime, or there's a certain ancestor, there's a certain energy in her energy body that is attempting to communicate with her. So we have to look behind the illusion to wake up in the dream. And that can be on many different levels. And in healing, it's definitely the case that we are looking past the illusion of what's being presented to see what the real cause is, or to see what is the real issue here.
I want to go a bit deeper on some of these things, and I understand you've got a course that's coming up, and I'm excited for that course because I'm part of it. But before that, I want to go backtrack a little bit, because a lot of the ancient cultures that you've been able to be a part of and learn from, for me, I think for most people as well, it's really difficult to find those wisdom, because books, a lot of tradition has been burned and destroyed, and it's gone underground. And so it's not something that I could easily accessible and type in Google. Like I've tried, like what are some of the sacred rituals, and what is dream time? Like I hear it in Australia all the time, and what is dream time? But I'm getting it from the almost like a Chinese whisper, they call it. By the time that it gets to what I'm reading, it's so filtered out. I don't see a strong sense of the truth. It is a partial truth. But tell me about how do you, like, out of the 3 different places that you resonated with the most, the Australian, the Toltec, and the Tibetan, like which one do you start off on the journey? And was it logical that you found a book or heard from someone, let's go and visit it for answers that you're seeking? Or was it something that you called to just go? And how do you end up finding those tribes? Do you just somehow stumbled across it through a pamphlet you picked up on the airport, or you just let those teachers?
Okay, well, the short answer is I followed my dreaming. Okay, so
wow.
and I'll go a bit more into what that means, but in a bit more of a detailed sense of a story. I started years and years ago. My first I saw this spirit come out of someone. And it didn't happen once, it happened many times. And it was very clearly a spirit coming in. Well, at that time, I didn't know it was a spirit. I was just freaked out, to be honest with you. I didn't quite know what was going on. And so, but when it happened various times, then I wanted to investigate what this was. And then I learned that it was a spirit coming out of someone. And so I started wanting to learn about the relationship between the body and the spirit. And then I went on a course in Wales, a shamanic course taught by Duncan Wordley, actually. Hello, Duncan, if you're listening. He was my first teacher. He's an Englishman who lived in Wales teaching North American shamanism. That opened some doors, but there was a certain incoherence. And although certain doors were open, there was a sense in which I need a direct transmission. All right, what I want is the real shaman. I want a real direct transmission.
It's kind of what I was just saying, that reading some of the literature online, it's incoherent.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because then I sort of went traveling. I traveled for 10 years. And in the first years, I was a bit like you, like, where are they? Where is the real shaman? How do I get to meet the real shaman? And I did meet some shamans through asking about, and mostly through asking about. But after a few years, it became really clear that these weren't the ones that had the answers. And all that time, well, I suppose all that time what I was learning was that the answer was coming from my dreaming. So when I say the answer comes from my dreaming, it comes from the whole dreaming. It comes from the dreaming at night, and it comes from dreaming in the day. So in the daytime, there are these messages the whole time. You're being given messages the whole time about where to go, what to do, how to move. Okay, these messages are constant, and we are receiving these messages constantly, but quite often we're not actually aware of those messages. We're just not aware of the gifts that are being, it's on our plate, it's on the plate, and we're kind of blind most of the time. So quite a lot of the time I was being taught how to read the messages, and then in my night dreams there were very clear messages, like there would be a place, for example, and so I would go to the place that would appear in my dream. If Bolivia appeared in my dream, I went to Bolivia. If Mexico appeared in my dream, I went to Mexico. I followed the dreaming, literally followed the dreaming. And that became much more coherent, because then things started to happen, what you would call coincidence. Well, what you might call coincidences, but there are no coincidences, started to happen. So, for example, I was traveling in Bolivia, and I was just looking out at the river scene in a place called Rurrenabaque, which is in the kind of Bolivian Amazon. And my attention was taken to one boat, and I was just looking at this guy, and I don't know how it happened, but I started talking to him, and I said, "Where are you going, and what are you doing?" And he was a Peruvian shaman working in Bolivia. And through that conversation, which was pretty banal, he just invited me to go with him. And so, well, where did that come from? That didn't come from Google. It didn't come from me searching. It just came from a moment where I was drawn towards that particular boat and that particular person. And all of a sudden, I'm going on that boat, traveling with this Peruvian shaman. And with him, I learned various things. Some things I didn't really want to learn, but some things I did. But just using that as an example, those kinds of things started to happen more often, where the energies would sort of coalesce. Like I would find myself here, or I'd find myself here, or a dream would tell me to go here, or a dream would tell me to go there. And then it became much more fluid, like the connections became much more fluid, the ceremonies became much more fluid, and the dreaming became much more fluid. So when I say to you that I came to my teachers through listening to my dreaming, I would say that I changed my perception. Because there are energies that are talking to you all the time. There are teachers that are talking to you all the time. But if you don't perceive them, then you can't hear them. And so when you change your assemblage point and you start to perceive them, you start to hear them, then you start working on a different level. Things start in, a lot of it's got to do with heart energy and opening the heart to experience in a way that the mind can't or doesn't experience. And a lot of it is very difficult to explain. So like the Nagual teachers in Mexico, they are very complicated, the Nagual teachers in Mexico, because they don't actually teach you like, okay, now do this, now do that. This is the exercise, this is the exercise. They teach you through mystery. Most of the time you're blind. You don't know what's going on. And they'll take you into a situation and you don't know what the teaching is. And you don't know why they've taken you there. And you haven't a clue, basically. But that's the starting place. So not having the clue, being like a child, being kind of open, being kind of like ready for whatever happens is the starting place. And a lot of their work, the Nagual teachers, is to break down the mind so that you let go of expectation, so that you let go of demanding, so that you let go of holding time and space, and you open entirely to whatever time and space opens for you. So once you're at that level where you're kind of like clueless, yeah, a very heightened state of cluelessness, you're taken to this kind of like a place, which can be a rock or a tree or a field or a river or a sea or a mountain. And in that place, a transmission takes place. Now, they are not directly talking to you. The transmission doesn't happen directly like it's happening now. There's a transition, verbal transition between me and you. It's an indirect transmission. And so there are certain teachers that are human, not human, that do the transmission. You see, the humans are just the channel. Humans are the channel for the teachers. Humans are the channels for opening the doors so that the real teachers can give you the transmission of the truth. And how they do that is various techniques to quieten the mind, often very bizarre techniques to quieten the mind, so that you get to the place where you're like this clueless child, like just open. Like, okay, well, whatever. And then when you're in that opening, without expectation and acceptance, it's like, that's when it happens. It's when you get the transmission.
Like how? What are some of the bizarre way that they help you to quiet the mind?
You'll do very strange exercises like this. Okay, so here's a fork. Okay, so I put it down, and then I very slowly pick it up, and then I put it down again, and then I pick it up again. And I do that for about an hour or 2 hours. I just repeat. It's mindless. It's totally useless. It's totally without reason. That's the point, really. And so you learn that actually there is a way to pick up a fork that's right. I know that doesn't make any sense, but there is. There's a way of picking up a fork in which you are totally aligned with the relationship between the finger and the fork and the movement of the fork in time and space. And when you become entirely aligned with that movement and the relationship between this being and this being, then in some senses you succeeded because you've become you've developed your attention and you are aligned with the energy. If I'm like doing it like I am now, I'm not really doing it with great attention. Just picking it up there for you guys and then just putting it down. It just seems silly, like banal, like, and so what?
It reminds me of It reminds me of the movie The Karate Kid. Are you familiar with that movie? The Karate Kid is this Caucasian person that wants to learn from this Japanese karate master, and he's wanting to learn kung fu to defend himself, or karate, and he's get him to wash his car, wipe on or wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. It's like, why am I doing this? But like most people remember wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. It's the same repetitive motion. And what I started enjoyment is like scrubbing the toilet bowl, like scrub, 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 and I never had that fetish before, if I call it that, and now it's like this is enjoyable.
They call it the not doing of the personal self. Right, you're given lots and lots and lots of banal, absurd, useless, apparently useless tasks to do, and what it does is it breaks down the mind because it's irrational. It doesn't have any meaning at all. When you go past the rational mind, the reasonable mind, then you get to a higher level of mind. And in that higher level of mind, your assembly point shifts and you start to perceive energy. You go through the fixed attention, you start to perceive energy.
Do you ever try to get your son to pick up the fork for 2 hours?
Maybe he'd do it for 2 seconds.
I'm thinking maybe my kids, I can get them to do it, but they will only have like a 2-second duration of patience as well.
I attempt to teach meditation to kids, and I found that, well, depending on their age, they can do it for about a minute, like 5-year-olds, they can do it for about a minute. But it tends to have to be a game involved. Like, okay, who can guess how long a minute is? and who can be aware that they are breathing for a whole minute? Let's see who can do it. Then when they're a bit older, you can try 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. But they can do it. It just like needs an enganche, as we say in Mexico. It needs a hook. To get them to do it.
So you started off, is it with the Toltec that you was just speaking about, or was it another tribe?
These are the Nagual teachers. Nagualism is, that's the Toltec tradition. And these are the teachers that are in touch with, for what most people would be, invisible energies. And you gradually become aware of these very powerful invisible energies. And they become so powerful. It's interesting that I look at politics now and I think that they're completely missing the point. because these are not the powerful ones. The ones in government, the ones, even powerful business people, the army generals, they are not the powerful ones. There are energies behind them that are the powerful ones. Nagualism, you learn about that. You learn to really connect with the big dreamers, the powerful dreamers. And that really changes your perception. And then dreaming, or, conscious dreaming, for me, it's the only useful thing to do. Like, for example, in the face of what's going on now, like the fear and control, the madness of what's going on now. It's like, well, that in America, more than in Europe and Australia, there's lots of reaction, there's demonstration, there's resistance. I look at that and I go, well, what can I usefully do? Well, I can usefully go behind the virus and communicate with the virus. The virus is an energy, it's a consciousness. It's part of consciousness. Everything is part of consciousness. And the virus has consciousness. So my place as a shamanic practitioner, if you like, is to communicate with that energy, to find out, well, why has it come into our consciousness? What has it got to say to us? What is the message? How are we supposed to deal with this? Now, the kind of battle, war kind of metaphors that most governments use, we're going to fight it, and we're going to defeat it, and we're going to kill it, and we're going to destroy it. Really, it's not very intelligent, because this is an intelligence that's part of consciousness that arises in order for us to experience something. So in terms of, scientific theories, that kind of like theory of the mass, you get over to a certain level and a certain amount of people have it in the population, and then that creates a natural kind of like
immunity.
Immunity to the. Now, this is more intelligent. I mean, from a shamanic perspective, this is much more intelligent, because this is the human being learning how to absorb and integrate this energy. And whatever experiences you have, even if you have a certain amount of the population dying, and frankly, it's not as great I'm making it out to be. If we have learned from the experience, then that is much more healing than if we attempt to kill it. You can't actually kill it. I mean, the whole concept of the virus, not the virus, the vaccine also is a myth, actually. You can't kill it. It's part of consciousness. So the way to deal with the virus is to communicate with the virus. So I communicate with the spirit of the virus to find out what its message to us, or why is it coming into consciousness? What part of consciousness is arising in this dream through this virus? Sometimes you have to just wait for a certain moment, and then in a certain moment, then that's the moment when you receive the right thing to say. So for you guys, for everyone really, for me, for you, for everyone that's listening, for the whole of the population, listen to the experience. Don't block the experience or resist the experience or try and kill the experience or try and change the experience. The experience of the virus comes into your consciousness to teach you something, and it's going to teach everyone something different. It's going to teach you something different to me, and it's going to teach Callum something different to Frank. And so the virus comes into your consciousness, whether you contract the virus or not, and most of you are not even aware of whether you've had it or not. It's come into your consciousness because it's come into the culture, even if you don't actually get ill with it. Well, it's not really ill. Not even if you don't go through that process of awakening with it, you're still being affected by the global consciousness of it. So we are in the place of opening up to listen to what it has to tell us. And so it's a messenger. The virus is a messenger. It's like another messenger in a dream, okay? And if we just fight it off, then we're missing the message. If we open to the message of the virus, then we will get the message, and then we'll learn from the experience.
Yeah. Well, you got me into a maze, and I'm still into this rabbit hole. So now I want to hear a bit about the Australian Aboriginal, because I'm fascinated. Dreamtime, like, why do they call it Dreamtime? Are they the oldest tribes around, like 75,000, 80,000 years, or even 120,000 years, I've heard? I can't find much wisdom in terms of books or videos that talk like from the coherent stuff, like the stuff that they actually use to connect. Are they using plants? Are they just meditating? Like how do you get involved? How do you came across them?
Okay, almost all shamanic traditions, almost all are very wounded. Very, very, very wounded. And the Australian Aboriginals are some of the most wounded people I've ever met in terms of. In fact, the first time I met them, I ran away from Australia because I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle how broken they were. I couldn't handle the history in Australia, really. I mean, it's not an unusual history. It's happened in North America, it's happened in Central America, it's happened all over the world. The violation and destruction of the indigenous traditions. In Australia, I don't know why, but it really impacted me very, very strongly. And the first time I went there, I just ran. I remember I just want to get out of here. I got a ticket fast and I went off to Bali. Second and third times, I was a bit more kind of like steady. So that's the first thing I would say to you, is that the Aboriginal traditions in Australia are very wounded. However, there are some people who still hold their energy. And this is the thing what I've learned, right, from traveling to different traditions in different countries, is that what appears to you is not what you get. I'm not actually trying to communicate to the Australian Aboriginal tradition as it is now, because it is so broken. The tradition is so broken, and they are living in such pain. If I just engage with that pain, I'm just not going to get the teaching that I'm looking for. But they are lineage carriers. And so when I'm taking part in their fires and taking part in their ceremonies, if I can go behind the presentation of the wounding, then I can get to the information. And for that, you need to use your dreaming body. Yeah. And it's the same with the Aboriginals, it's the same with the witch-holes. You know, where my center is in the desert, it's exactly the same. There are the witch-holes who come on their pilgrimage to the sacred mountain. They are so damaged. Actually not as damaged as the Australian Aboriginals, but they're still very, very damaged. And I did a lot of ceremonies with them until I realized that the point wasn't so much to them, it was the energy that they bring. And the lineage that they bring, as in the lineage that the Australian Aboriginals bring, you access through your dreaming body. So of course you're not going to see that in Google. Of course, you're not even going to go and see that if you go to Australian Aboriginal settlements. I mean, there are some courses that are available in Australia with certain Aboriginals that have been educated in the West, and then they bring their experiences to the Western world. Even in that context, you're not going to get the information. The real information is behind. It's in the lineage behind. And so in the physical, yes, I was with them. In the physical, I did fires with them. In the physical, I talked with them. In the physical, I stayed with them. But what is interesting is not so much what happened on the surface. What was interesting, all the information that I got, was what happened behind the surface. Yeah. So when you develop,
was that induced by using like a cage or any of the medicine, or was it just from meditation or from the dancing or from your own spiritual practice? You've learned that this is how I can get into my dream body, and you just kind of connect it yourself.
Yeah, there are lots of different practices that help you to open your dreaming body so that you can get behind the illusion. The most simplest is breath and intent. When we connect with breath and we bring that together with our intent, that creates magic. Our intent is energy that extends from the physical body. It's not just an idea. It's not an intention that you think, oh, I have an intention to go and make a cup of tea. Or, you know, that's very English thing to say with crumpets. It's not like that. It's an energy that extends from my physical body and then travels through time and space. And so with my breath, I connect with my intent and I extend through time and space. So I'm round an Aboriginal fire. I'm trying to connect now with one of those times. So I'm with this fire, I'm with the Aboriginals, and my dreaming body is going through the fire, through my breath, and is traveling to their ancestors in the stars, because it's at night, it's in the desert. So, and then I get to receive the information from the stars, from their ancestors, and I get to receive the information from the fire. Now, with the Australian Aboriginals, I didn't take anything. It was just through my experience of breathing and bringing together breath and intent. With the witch-holes, yeah, there was peyote. And peyote, it just opens your body very fast. A lot of people take teacher plants to what we would call extend their dream body very fast. And I was before much kind of very focused on that, which has its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that you go beyond the mind very fast. Okay. The disadvantage is that it takes a very long time, if ever, to be able to integrate teachings that you have whilst you are under the influence of that plant. I think in my experience it takes 3 years for each ceremony.
Wow.
Each ceremony really takes about 3 years to really integrate. I mean, as the more I did it, the less I did it, actually. Because the more I did it, the more I realized, no, I need lots and lots of time to really understand what these teachings are. I need a lot of time. And so, as I said, the advantage is that you go fast, and the disadvantage is, well, you might have all these out-of-body experiences, but what does that mean when I go to the office when I get back? Or what does that mean when I'm in a relationship with my wife? Or what does it really mean in a relationship with my son? Or what does it mean when I'm in the supermarket? I did a workshop with a really amazing guy from Lithuania. He's a director of a recycling business. And he sends all his managers on ayahuasca retreats, right? And he came to my retreat in Mexico. It was a 2-week retreat. There was no teacher plant ceremonies at all. And he said to me, "This is like slow ayahuasca." So he said. And anyway, he invited me to go to his company and give a retreat. And the retreat was about, how do you ground your ayahuasca experience into the office? Because they're all working in the office, in the warehouse. Not necessarily the office. It could be the warehouse. It could be some people are drivers, some people on the phone. Whatever it is they're doing, you have this experience in ayahuasca, and it's like, so how does that apply? And they had no idea. It was just sort of like, it's like going on holiday or something. It's like, well, this other world, that's experienced in ayahuasca, which is completely distinct from, being in front of a computer or answering a call or something like that. And what I was trying to show them was, no, it's not. There are bridges. There are bridges in time and space that can connect the experience you had whilst you were on ayahuasca and the telephone and the conversation that you're having on your mobile phone with a client right now. There are bridges that you can build between times and spaces. And you do that with the conscious use of breath and intent. So with this group of people, for example, they all had ayahuasca, all right? So, okay, we're going to go to the memory of that ayahuasca experience. Okay, so we did the meditation where we went to the memory of that ayahuasca experience. And then we brought that into the physical body so that they could actually feel that experience in their body. Okay, and then I got them to do something banal, from that place. Like, don't lose it, don't close it down, don't close it down. Now make a call. Now go on the computer. Now, go make tea, whatever, and stay in that place. How does it affect the way in which you operate? Of course, it had a tremendous effect about the way they operated, much less stress, for example, because they're seeing the bigger picture. They're seeing the bigger picture of the universe, and they're bringing that bigger picture into one time and space. Well, I mean, then you start laughing more because things just don't matter so much. It's like, when you see your drama in relationship to the whole universe, it's like, it's laughable. It's like most of our dramas are laughable. The Nagwa teachers laugh at you the whole time. All of your dramas, they laugh at you the whole time. And it can be very humiliating, and it can feel very humiliating. Yeah. But after a while, you realize that it is funny how seriously we take ourselves. It's hilarious how seriously we take ourselves.
Yeah.
I have a delayed reaction. I can be in the drama and then I'll see it afterwards and I'll go, how could I possibly have done that? How could I fall into that? So bringing these big experiences to the small experience is part of what we're attempting to do in this course as well. It's like when you open up to the journey of your soul and you bring that into your relationships, your home, your food, your work, it changes the way that you operate. It changes the way that you experience your everyday life.
Wow, I guess my initial curiosity of what the course is, because it's kind of like you following the Peruvian shaman, and like I just followed your course without even understanding what the hell did I get myself enrolled into. But it's almost like what you described. It's almost like life is a mystery. You need to be the Sherlock Holmes and picking up clues and work out, like, why am I here? Why did I get these signals? And at first I thought it's to learn certain knowledge. And yes, you get that from the course, but you also get Is it about creating the dream lifestyle, the manifestation, about bending reality, reality hacking? Yes, you get that as well. But I guess you also get the every single day, like what you just described, typing every single key. It could be a spiritual act. Every single breath, every word that you utter out, you're sharing, you're teaching us on how that could be, whoa, just as deep as almost like going on ayahuasca or one of the plant medicine journey. At least it's all as one. It's not like that is a peak experience and this is boring. Like this is me typing or me just talking to someone is boring. Like it could be just as part of the whole process that you feel just as whole.
I have two responses to what you said. The first response when you started to talk was, I trust myself more when I don't know why I'm doing something than when I know that I'm doing something. When I don't know why I'm doing something, but I'm doing it anyway, with a sense of, I know this is what I should do, I tend to trust myself much more than if I know the reason why I'm doing something. Because the former way, it involves what the North American Indians call the great mystery. I don't know. And so I'm going into the void and I'm following a sense of trust, a sense of inner knowing, which is beyond the mind. And so there's a sense in which I'm reaching into deeper wisdom. So that's my first response. And then the second response I had whilst you were talking was, it's not so much what you're doing, it's the attention with which you're doing it. So it's not so much whether you're on the computer or making tea or washing the floor or sitting on the loo or, in a meeting. What is the consciousness that you have whilst that is taking place? What consciousness do you hold in each moment? When you open to your soul's journey, then you understand that this lifetime is just one of many lifetimes. And when I connect this lifetime with many lifetimes, I can be doing something incredibly banal and something extraordinarily magical is happening whilst I am doing something that is apparently incredibly banal. So in terms of what you get out of it, you get a sense of how can you be more conscious whilst you are doing what you're doing? And what does that mean to be more conscious whilst you're doing what you're doing? When you connect with your soul, you become more conscious. First of all, that's the first level is, how do you connect with your soul? How do you connect with your essence? How do you connect with your beginning? And how does all your experience of time and space move through this time and space? How does that take place? So there can be moments when I am conscious and there can be moments when I'm unconscious whilst I'm working. And the highlight of the day is when I'm conscious, which can be just the moment I step out of the train, the moment that I open that door, the moment that I pick up that fork can be the moment when I become conscious. So it's not so much doing, it's more a sense of how you are whilst you do.
And understand within the course is not only teaching from you each week or maybe each fortnight, there's actually practices that we have to integrate within ourselves. It's just like a lot of the shamanism traditions is you have to do the work yourself. And I think one of the things that you shared with me before, one of the things that being a marketer for 20 years and when I started to wake up, it's almost like I don't want to oversell anything anymore because like you can use fear, you can use feed or greed, carrot or sticks to use it in your marketing to try to entice people. But the truth is enough. And I think that's what you help us getting down to, the truth of why we're here, the truth of this moment, the truth of what is our soul trying to guide us towards at this very moment. And it's very rare to find a teacher that have spent so much time across many various traditions and be able to share with us, not just from the knowledge standpoint, but have exercise for us to actually learn over like a 5-month period, having an accountability group, a buddy of intimate group that we could continue on this path of awakening journey together. And for those of people that are only starting to awaken or have interest to get awakening, like sometimes it could be very dark and lonely and scary, and you provide a safe space for us to container for us to wake up to as well. And so I'm so grateful for the work that you do, Daniel.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. So there are 2 sessions a month. The first session, there are teachings that come from different traditions, and I will name those traditions. And then there are practices. Now, the actual experience is more about what you do rather than what I do, because these experiences are what will open your consciousness, open your dreaming body. And so these practices are set up for you to be able to open and expand your consciousness. And then there is this kind of holding that I am making so that you can feel supported in this journey. As you have said, Gary, sometimes you don't quite know where you are. And so I'm really here to support you in the practice and support you in your journey, whatever arises. And then the group, which is a sort of virtual Sangha, is also, in a sense, holding us, you know. And it's interesting, a lot of people who sign up to do this are people that I already know and people that work, some of them, quite a long time. And so we're also, in a sense, creating a community. It doesn't matter what country you live in. But right now there are people from Australia and from the United States and from the United Kingdom. We can create a sense of circle together. That's one of the advantages of magic of the internet. We can do that. And so there is space and time also for your feedback and for my reflections. I just need to make it clear to you all that I have no answers for you. What I do have is a kind of ability to make spaces where you can find your answers. And that's really what I'm trying to do, create spaces where you find your answers and give you tools so that you can find your answers. And you will find on the way that you will have helpers or teachers that are not necessarily human, and those will become your guides, your inner guides. It's part of you. These will become your guides. So I'm hoping you are going to meet your guides. Well, the very first month, you're going to meet your star, which is the root of your soul. This is a phenomenal guide. When you walk your star on earth and you are guided by your star, then your consciousness can really shift. So there are many other supporters on this journey, and it's not just me. There are supporters that are going to come from you, guides that are going to come from you, teachers that are going to come from you, through you.
Wow, I'm so excited for this. I don't have any aspiration, at least right now, to be like a channeler or a spirit reader or psychic, but I do have aspirations to wanting to quiet the minds and connect to my higher self and my soul and my spirits to but to walk a more congruent life, a more aligned path. Because the more that I remember, the more that, like what you said, the world is not what we know it, and even what we seem as from a human standpoint, from a physical form standpoint, it seems as tragedy, but there's a greater blessing, a greater, like the coronavirus as an example, and everyone being able to be at their own, more space for them to be at themselves rather than busy doing. We all here to wake up. At least that's my belief. We all here to wake up, and the more that we could do as a collective to bring our consciousness up, it will automatically raise the vibration of the rest of the world. And so I really invite any of the listeners out there, any of my buddies that wanting to go on this journey. I believe it's starting on the 1st of July, and it's going to be recorded. So if your time zone is not exactly on the same time, it doesn't matter. The Facebook group is going to be support as a container to support all of us. It's going to be a fun and an amazing journey. And I'm really thankful for Daniel for really opening up this course and keeping the fees quite affordable to all of us to be a part of. So the website is 12consciousdreamers.com. I'm going to paste it in the show notes, and the course, I think, is called The Journey Home. So it's amazing. Anything else you want to share about the course before we finish up with a story I'm going to ask you to share?
Well, there are some practical benefits, and we will be kind of like focusing on what are the practical benefits. So it's like, if you know what your soul journey is on this planet,
if you know the relationship between your soul and your body, how does that affect your work? Or how does it affect your relationships? How does it affect your health? How does it affect your exercise? And so on. How does it affect every area of your life? It does. It does affect every area of your life. And so it's not just an esoteric exploration. It's also a very practical exploration of how you can become much more conscious in the dream of your life. So in a work situation, for example, you start making more informed decisions because you have much more mind space, so you make much more informed decisions. In your relationships, you don't get so tangled in squabbles, in fights, because you have a sort of mind space that prevents you from being drawn into the same patterns, and you can see the patterns before you get drawn into them. For your health, you become more aware of what is actually good for you, what food is good for you, what kind of exercise is good for you. And then in terms of the place to live, for example, your dreaming and your consciousness can show you, can teach you what is the right place, what is the right timing. And so it can come down to very, very small moments, that the big moments can come down to very small moments. And so a lot of what we're doing in the course is actually focusing on how can that affect my work? How can that affect my relationship? How can that affect my health? How can that affect my abundance also? It's also working on quite a sort of down-to-earth level, as well as a very open and spiritually conscious level.
Awesome. Sounds great. So, Daniel, thank you so much for being on this call and sharing all that you can. And I'm going to paste the notes to be a part of this program, as well as anything that they can do to follow you on social media, on your Facebook group as well. So I'm going to ask you to get within the triad of the story. So can you share a story, something interesting, something profound, something funny, whatever you like, about your Tibetan Buddhism experience?
Yeah.
I like this story already.
I was in this temple in Kathmandu, or just outside Kathmandu, for some months. Actually, I was really on the path to become a Buddhist. That's when I thought I was going. And I was in this temple, and in this temple, they actually locked the temples to go meditate. It was only open at a certain time, and it was closed at a certain time. And when it was open, there was always this Buddhist monk in there. And I used to get up as early as I could so that I could spend all the time in a temple whilst it was open. Okay. This monk was really noisy. He was the most noisiest meditator I'd ever had the misfortune to experience. And it was mostly just him and me, because it was just him doing his adorations and me doing my meditation. And the guy was farting, and he was he was sneezing, and he was coughing, and he was rumbling, and it was like, oh my God, this guy, and he was one of the most kind of like revered kind of like monks of the temple, and I was like, this is a very evolved human being, and here I am getting terribly distracted by him and really annoyed by him, And so I asked my guides. Well, in fact, I asked my Buddha guide, because that was my guide at that time. How do I deal with this moment? And they said to me, okay, the next time he farts, just try and focus on the infinite fart, and the next time he coughs, focus on the infinite cough. So the next time he farted very loudly, I just focused on this as being an infinite sound and an infinite movement. And I found myself moving into infinite consciousness. And when he coughed, the same. And so I started to actually kind of like look forward to the next fart, or look forward to the next cough, or look forward to the next groan, or look forward to the next kind of like eruption of sound. And then from there, I'd be taken on a journey. I'd be taken on a journey somewhere in consciousness. So, he became the teacher.
Wow.
He became the teacher.
I would have thought that he's putting meditating in the mountains, and I've seen videos of them in the freezing cold, putting them wet towels on them like topless, and I would thought that would be one of the most transformational practices. But who knows that it was the fart, but that so totally makes sense. I can so relate, not that I've experienced it, but when you can transcend beyond the physical form of whatever that is, or the physical smell of what that is, everything is consciousness, just like what you shared earlier of looking into a plant. And so even within the thoughts, that something normally we feel disgusted by can be so beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing that.
There's something else I want to share about this temple. The thing I didn't understand was, why was this temple so powerful? You know, it's like I could meditate in my room, right? I could meditate in my little cell, or I could meditate in the temple. And every time I meditate in the temple, I had a hugely powerful experience. That's why I wanted to be there so much. And I believe that the power of the temple came not from the objects so much, but from his prayers and their prayers. Because his prayers and their prayers created a certain space within that temple, created a lineage, or helped me to be able to connect to their lineage. And so I liked him being there because his reverences helped me to connect to the lineage. And so they do actually believe that there are certain powers in the objects. I don't really go for that, but they do. But what I did feel was that this is a doorway, this temple is a doorway into understanding their lineage and their mysteries. And so that's why I always wanted to be there in that temple.
Man, I'm conscious of time, so I'm so grateful for you sharing, because I wanted to ask you so much more about the energy centers, and I heard Tibetan is there. I know that you've been to Ayers Rock, there's the energy centers, but I'm sure that we're going to touch on some of these things in the courses, if not within the Facebook group. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to connecting with you in the course.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gary, and thank you for all of you for listening. Bye-bye for now.